Welcome to another episode of the Well Life Podcast, where we connect with individuals and experts in what we have determined as the 8 dimensions of wellness.
Yep, we got our buddy Kenny Charles on today, who is a financial advisor, right, helping people with their money, right, showing the importance of financial wellness, right, and how to kind of go about that, right. So that's the main gist of what you do, right, for people. So, to start, right, very casual, give us a breakdown of who you are, right, what you do in the finance world, and then kind of open it up to like a general little definition of wellness in that sense, and like what your kind of lifestyle has been about being an athlete and moving your way into finance.
Cool. So, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Kenny Charles, I'm a financial advisor, born and raised in Huntington, grew up here my whole life, came back here from college in 2020, been working in the financial field for 3 years. What we really do, I like to say, like, we help people make more informed financial decisions. I know it's really broad, but
It's good.
It's like to a T what we do. We help people make more informed financial decisions. You don't want to be the one who's, working a full job at home and then coming home and having to, think every day about what to do with your money. Sometimes you want to go to a subject matter expert and be able to rely on them and get all the information that you need.
Yeah, no, that's largely important for everybody. Obviously, that's one of the things that we focus on in the overall scope of wellness, right? We have the 8 dimensions, finance being one of those, but I feel like it's something that people either get so uncomfortable when they're talking about, right? It's not as casual of a conversation, but it's also something that holds so much weight, probably the most weight, right? Out of anyone that's mainly in an American family, right? Like how to live above that line, find yourself in the right finances every single day in the type of lifestyle where we live in a world that's credit-based almost, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like you end up having almost a way bigger credit limit than probably triple, quadruple your credit limit is than your salary, right, per month. So it's like, let's talk about like that, right, is a huge, almost can be a huge hindrance or a huge benefit to someone's life. But that's just an example of how important finance can be, managing it, how it comes back to you and kind of, puts a lot of stress on people and families entirely, and how they can live their lifestyle.
Yeah, I would think that there are surveys that kind of go out that have shown that financial stress is probably the number one stress for couples and kind of for families, because it's ends meet, right? It's how am I paying off debts, and right, we think about the number one probably headline that's been politically, right, with Biden in office has been like student loans, right? So there's always this thing about finance, how people, right, we always, like, you hear a lot about, right, average income and poverty line, right? So like there is this big issue kind of with finance and that being the number one stressor for families and couples. And how do you kind of see that kind of financial wellness picture play out with either within your own lifestyle, things that you've seen, stories that you've had with kind of either with clients or just that you've seen kind of coming up?
I mean, just the overall importance of it is a major factor, why I'm even in this career. I'm no stranger to financial services, if you will. Like my dad did the business. I grew up in and around it, so I had like a good understanding of it. But one of the driving factors of why I got involved in it was, in my own household. So before my dad knew these things, he practiced this stuff with clients. But mom, she was like a nurse practitioner, and back in the 90s, she was involved in like 2 accidents where, surgeries didn't go well to repair her broken bones. She ended up being disabled, not being able to work anymore.
Gotcha.
So, the whole weight of the household and raising 4 kids and Long Island fell on dad. And as you can imagine, these financial stresses and that kind of thing has a weight on the household.
For sure.
It can definitely mess things up for you. So not taking these things into account, not understanding the overall financial picture is very detrimental.
Yeah. So I know, similarly, right, from similar neighborhoods, my mother was my father passed early, single mother, kind of do the similar thing, right? A lot of financial stress placed on the family. And what you see coming up there is this kind of like conversation that you had of, do you have an understanding of credit, right? Do you have an understanding of how you're saving? Do you have an understanding of investments? And my mother, very capable, love you, very capable woman, right, is in finance herself.
Yeah.
But when you don't have the time nor the education from prior generations in your family to pass down that information, you got to play catch up, right?
Yeah.
So herself, she had to catch up to the finances that she needed to have in place for her family to succeed, for her kids to succeed, right? Because that just wasn't, the financial education just wasn't in place. So she is and a college graduate. She is an upper level management person at a company in a finance role that still wasn't able to. She had to play catch up with her finances because she was raising a family by herself.
Yeah.
She was the sole provider, and then she also didn't have this financial backing to kind of guide her along. So right, she had to make mistakes and then figure it out. Right. So think about things that are like credit, like savings. Right. Having the correct instruments in place for your children to have savings accounts and college education accounts. Right. So if you don't have the finances up front, how do you have these accounts set to have savings? So it all just puts stress on families, right? It all puts stress on your kids. It puts stress on vacations that you can have with your kids, right? So do you see, what tools do you kind of talk to people about to even kind of put in place, either from a budgeting standpoint, from a kind of credit card standpoint? Do you have the kind of these overall conversations about finance to get people kind of in a good place?
Yeah. The main thing is that like conversation overall, right?
Yeah.
A lot of what we do is, overall conversations, educational. There's a big, or unfortunately in my business, is like a negative connotation. You see it on the movies, like, Boiler Room and movies like that, where advisors and stockbrokers are trading.
Great movie.
People are out for to run in those big profits and trades. It's like, that's not right. Investing is great, but this is like the day-to-day budget, lifestyle budgeting kind of approach.
By no means my business isn't that exciting at all. It's very slow. Financial planning, financial wellness is very slow, but it is very impactful though. So foundational budget, definitely. You have to understand where money's going, or else, what are you really doing? You have to know, what's coming in every month, what's going out, how can I save, where can I improve? So definitely starting out there, and everybody's different. I'd say from there, it really depends on who you are and where you are in life, but definitely foundational is budgeting.
I like to talk to people because obviously, not obviously, but I also do some financial consulting, and there's like these big conversations about kind of discretionary income. I just talk about like building this pot, right? So have some amount of savings that's going to help you feel comfortable. Right. So I usually recommend somewhere 3-6 months. Do you have something that where you talk about having a cushion kind of for things?
So for people who are in more entrepreneurial roles where your income tends to be more fluctuate month to month, I like to tell them to have a year of emergency reserves build up. Everybody's different. Some people do 6 months, but probably good to have anywhere from 6 months to a year of those emergency reserves build up. Somebody who's in a salary-based role, you know what you're going to make every month. Your expenses are pretty settled. Maybe 6 months of savings built up. After that, you should be looking at ways to get the money working for you. But 6 months, if you're in a comfortable role, is pretty safe.
Cool. That's a good little straight point to live by right there. Let's take it back a little bit, right? So you were a basketball player, right? And take us through Kenny being Kenny, going from Kenny the financial advisor, right? What happened in that span of you being an athlete, passionate about the sport, passionate about probably your overall fitness, what you're doing on a daily basis in that regard, and then shifting to taking that segue of all right, I'm an athlete, but no, I'm trying to be a professional at a financial professional that's now in a totally different sphere, totally different approach to the business, to sitting down with someone, right, that could have a certain amount of assets, certain whatever, and have the conversation I'm your guy, right? You trust me. So what's that approach, not the approach, but what's that shift that happened? Why did you become a financial advisor? I don't know if there's a moment or a thing that you went through, or you said you grew up in a financial household with a little bit of the struggle you guys went through. What was that track? What made you be oh, this is what I want to do, and now you're doing it?
Yeah. So again, dad was in financial services, so I had a good understanding of, and he focused more so on risk management. So think life insurance, disability insurance, those kinds of products. And then moving on, I always had an interest in math, economics, those kinds of things. So I kept up with the markets and things like that. Went to college, studied economics and communications. So, and in college, I was doing internships too at financial planning firms. So Dad was doing risk management. Those internships, it kind of opened up the whole universe, if you will, of financial services. And then it's crazy because the parallel between basketball, and I was by no means always a good basketball player, kind of just happened in my teens. I was never somebody who went to these camps when I was younger, but I worked really hard when I was a teenager. I ended up being pretty good at basketball, and that same kind of work ethic propelled me in this business now, because how I operate. I'm like not working for a company, if you will. I am building my own business. So the same drive I had that, pushed me to be the best player, if you will, when I was in high school and college, I want to do that now in this business. There's no reason why, I shouldn't have my own big financial services business, build off what my father had, and just be an example to others in the community of what's really possible.
It's like self-driven, translating from athlete to business.
Yeah, so that's really like the driving factor behind it. And then a constant theme of what I'm always doing is like helping people. So like what I'm doing in town, what I do with like my nonprofit, Leaders in New School, love to help people.
Yeah.
And what better career to be in than we're helping people with their finances. So that's always been like a constant theme of what I love to do.
You're also on a board for the town.
Yeah, so I do
somehow, right? You got which obviously deserved. But
I keep my hands for it.
Yeah.
So I do affordable housing advisory board for the town, and then board of assessment review, which deals with like tax grievances, so commercial and residential taxes.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
That's
can help you guys out.
So right, you talk about maybe one day or having a big financial services book, right? Big financial services business. I like that connection that you definitely have to the community, right? For the community, what kind of first financial things would you say this is what I would implement for, right? If I'm talking about kind of a town here, this is what I would love to be able to implement, or the knowledge I would like to get out to people kind of first. Like what would be the first thing you could do for people, kind of the first knowledge you would want them to know, kind of if they were listening to this for the first time, or if it's say, hey, this is one tip you can learn from this. What would you be offering them, or what would you say they should kind of do?
That's a great question.
I don't mean that to be like too broad. I mean that in the sense of like what's like most important for someone that's sitting up the block, right? That has no idea about financial wellness. Like, all right, what's the first thing I should even think about?
I'm gonna sound a little bit like Gordon Ramsay, but I mean, historically speaking, right, the community that we grew up in, there's not too many individuals who are going out and investing on their own, right? But like if you turn on any Gordon Ramsay type podcast, you'll hear that if you stuck money in the market in 1970 or whatever time period, if you turned it in today, you'd have $1 million. What I'd say to anybody just starting out is, buy and hold, right? So maybe buy an index fund, a low cost.
Or wait, hold on. Dave Ramsey?
Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey. Okay,
just buy and hold.
Gordon Ramsay.
Gordon Ramsay, the chef. Yeah.
Either way.
Dave Ramsey, buy and hold, right?
Yeah.
Buy and hold into the stock market, and also there's a saying, and it talks about like estate planning, and it compares the Vanderbilts versus the Rockefellers. Both families acquired substantial amounts of wealth in the United States. Rockefellers were astute in doing their estate planning and making sure that their assets could be passed on to the next generation. Vanderbilts didn't do as well as the Rockefellers as far as estate planning goes. So the story goes that if you look at the two families today, that wealth that the Rockefellers acquired, it's still in that family today because of that proper estate planning. Whereas you look at the Vanderbilts, they didn't do that, so they're not as wealthy as they could have been. So just making sure that your estate planning is proper, and a lot of people don't realize this, but you don't want to be passing on. Think about it, like everybody has families. You don't want to leave your family destitute, right? At a moment when they're going to be missing you, you want to make sure that the least you can do is make sure that they don't have to worry about finances. So those are things: buy and hold, get invested early, and do proper type estate planning.
No, I think that's a very interesting take. At least so for both. And the first one to speak on first is like you mentioned, community come from very skeptical of investing. Because unfortunately, these are people that don't have access to a lot of money. So now you tell me that there's risk associated with something. They're not going to be risky, right? But it's like having to be able to get past this. It's only risk, right? You have to be able to see kind of the reward at the end of the risk, or be able to take a step back and be able to see an entire market cycle. That yes, if you look at the news in the past 2 years, there's been these ups and downs and volatility in the market. But if you take a step back, like you said, over whatever amount of years that is, you can see there's growth in this investment. But it's it's like being able to see this perspective, right? Having the knowledge of a buy and hold. Don't even look at it like trying to get people to, hey, you should be thinking about saving for retirement, right? Investing that money, put it in the market. I know I had a conversation with don't even mention, but like with a person that they kind of invested in a very conservative option at their employer, and there's someone that's been working for almost 40 years, and the growth they probably haven't seen on that money because they chose the elected conservative option is unreal. It's probably someone that started working in the, I'd say, in the 80s, right? So from the 80s to now 2020, the growth that could have been had through that time is probably, so maybe could be, I don't know, could be half, right? But they thought that because of the knowledge that was passed on to them was about being conservative in the market, right? Being like, because it's just fear and being skeptical of just kind of being in it. So it's like kind of trying to get past that barrier of I don't want to invest because I'm scared of the market. It's like you have to invest because the people that have money are investing. Right?
I'll piggyback off that story too, and add, I mean, at least that person had an idea of investing, right? I wasn't around, but I got the story passed down from the older OGs, if you will, at the firm. So the story goes like there's this client in the 1970s who got into this new job. They got invested into the company benefits, started investing for retirement, or so they thought. They didn't have any auto enrollment back then, so this person's contributing diligently every month to their retirement savings, but this whole time the money's sitting in cash.
Oh my
God.
Wow.
30, 40 years in the workforce, what you could have gotten, had you been invested.
And the issue is that person actually lost money. So if you
Yeah.
think about, because what happens
Inflation.
is, inflation. So the nominal value of that money stays the same, but they're just losing money kind of over every 10-year
The
period.
real dollars, the purchasing power of those dollars were, eroded.
That's terrible.
So just having these conversations, it's not all about, and again, people are cautious. These are sensitive conversations to have, but it's just really educational first. You have to understand these things and have these conversations and be in the know about this kind of stuff.
I think this is such an important conversation. One, as obviously we chose to include finance within kind of the pillars of our branding, our organization, the name, because it is like one of the number one stressors for people. So as for you to round it out, kind of bring it back to how do you handle kind of the stress in your life, either be it financial, right? What's your plan for you, your own finances? How do you work through that? So is it budget? Are you investing certain amounts? Obviously not your breakdown, right? But if you think about pockets of kind of money that you're bringing in, right? So is it, I ensure that I know what's coming in, that I'm investing, right? I'm investing in my retirement. Do you always have a plan in place kind of for that to ensure you're not feeling financial stress the way you've seen in your families?
You have to practice what you preach. So, I'm my own client. I do my own budget. I have my own investments that I do. So yes, I do practice budgeting. But just like everybody else, we all have a plan until we get punched in the mouth. So something's bound to happen, but you just have to make sure, so long as you have something foundational to fall back on, you'll get back on track. That's the idea. But yes, I practice what I preach. I do budget. It's important.
Cool. I was gonna say, what's with the approach of finance, since it's such a sensitive or not really a comfortable topic for a lot of people. I guess you probably get asked a ton by just regular, everyday friends, family, whatever conversations. If you're trying to open up conversation, or if they do, right, how do you approach it to someone, or tell someone, right, that they need to change their financial ways or their planning, or how do you almost, is there anything that you've seen in your process so far that it's like you're basically working off of people's habits, right? Every habit they have in their life is like, you spent this amount of money going to this place last month for what reason if you're in the red, right? Like, so I guess whether it's a story or a kind of a process you have, what are some approaches that you take in getting through to someone, I guess I could say, like introing them, breaking it down, and giving them that kind of like mental shift to allow them to better, right, be guided in the financial realm so that their life isn't affected in a negative way.
Again, going back to just having the conversation and being educational, I really don't like when people have their guard up in conversations, right? If they're keeping information from me, I'm only going to be able to help them out so much. So whether it's through relationship building and just being who I am, laughing with them, joking with them, keeping their guard down, keeping the safe space, if you will, that's helped a lot. So making it a comfortable environment for them to speak in. Again, it's a very sensitive topic, so making them comfortable helps the conversation overall. And then adding to that, talking in terms of their goals, right? Not everybody's a numbers person. Nobody wants to hear you crunching numbers all day. finding out what's really important to people, right? What do you want to achieve in 5 years? What do you want for your family in 10 years, right? What does that look like? So speaking to people in terms of that, are you going to go to Starbucks every day this week, or do you really want to have, this $1 million house in 5 years and raise a family here? So, when you're talking to people at the granular level like that, it really helps the conversation.
Yeah. Through some of this planning work, like, have you been able to see a change in someone's kind of outlook and their mentality after like kind of conversation one, so they have a plan in place?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'll tell you guys a story. I mean, it's unfortunate now, but I recently had one of my first clients who, A to Z, worked with them. One of the first ones that I got started with them when I started in the business. And it's not even really finance related, right? It's more so related to overall wellness. We were doing something where it was medically related, so somebody who didn't normally go to the doctor, they were having to check in now and find out what's going on with their blood sugar levels and things of that nature. So she was getting on this regimen and understanding what was going on with her health. Somebody who hadn't been to the doctor in 5 years, and somebody who was in the medical field.
Yeah.
But
That's
I
always how
love
it
to do
goes, though, too.
Yeah.
They're, like, in the industry, just they neglect those things because they're talking about them to other people.
So fast forward, I mean, unfortunately, she passed away a few months ago.
Wow.
But through the planning that we had done, and even catching the pre-existing condition early, who knows if she had been here this long, actually had not gotten that medicine. Between the financial help and between coincidentally her getting on top of her physical health,
Yeah.
it was a great what I was able to do for the family. I felt very connected to them. It's a lot more than finances. They end up becoming your close family.
That's something about you affected more than just your client's health and wellness, right?
Yeah.
Which happens a lot. Like, I know you can see here, right? If we're training someone and they're a better person, they're a better version of themselves. Typically, I think we kind of that theme is always there, that it radiates out, right?
Yeah.
They're a better parent, they're a better worker. So the same kind of in that situation,
Exactly.
right? Where now her family's in a better situation, their health and wellness is better because she left them in a better position.
Yeah.
Right. That's a powerful theme.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's actually I've seen it firsthand with my grandmother as Alzheimer's. And there wasn't much of a plan there, right? Lived a very great life, right? But my grandfather passed away over 20 years ago, right? But there was just a whole different mindset around kind of liquid savings, cash all the time, cash.
Yeah.
She was a banker, right? But she didn't allocate things properly. We found out she ran a lot of things on credit. But improperly planned in that sense, right?
Yeah.
So now she's going through that with living in a place right now, but I could see the stress on my mom, my dad on that, right? Just because of the planning and the allocation were things that just were completely unknown.
Yeah.
Right? And now it's handed off to someone that you didn't ever intentionally mean for that, right? So it's affecting everything essentially, and the lives of generations potentially. And how it processes down the line. That's actually interesting. I never even really thought about that.
Yeah.
How it's that physical health, right,
Huge.
segues into wait a second, if this person doesn't catch something, right, obviously anyone can just, get hit by a car or something, obviously, right? The worst thing can happen at any moment in that sense, but it's preparation.
But that's why it's right. It's called financial planning.
Yeah.
Right, because just like with your wellness, just like we talk about having a plan in place to kind of optimize yourself within that one niche. So with finance, you have to optimize whatever your financial plan is, right? It's going to be the money that you're making, right? Making sure that it's doing the best for you. So either it's saving and you're investing it, and then your future money, right? So think about tax preparation, think about estate planning, right? How does this money get transferred down to you?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. How do I have money to transfer down, and then how do I make sure it's transferred down the appropriate way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 3 pillars that we always like to say: plan for what you know is going to happen. So emergencies, taxes, and death.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Wasn't be prepared for those 3
Things you can't change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. I was gonna come back and say, do you have any? Doesn't have to be crazy specific, but I know that I've seen you sent us a very, very kind of beginner financial planning spreadsheet. It was just brief, right?
Yeah.
I've seen the brief spreadsheets. I mean, anyone can create one. It's a 5 to 10 minute thing. Just list your things. Do you have any percentage recommendation of, obviously they always say at a base living level, for someone that's paying rent, right? New York, rent in this town, average for one bedroom is probably 25 to 3,200, right?
Yeah.
If 2 bedroom, you're getting over $4 grand a month. They say like a 30-year income should be rent and no more than that, right? In New York, sometimes they recommend 50% of your monthly income just because it's such a high ticket.
Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of segue that into living a better life in that sense, right? I've always thought of how am I going to allocate and spend my money, and why wouldn't someone spend their money on certain things, right? Like either hiring a personal trainer or going to a therapist if they have lots of anxiety or they're struggling mentally, right? So they're not allocating finance, but they go to a restaurant and spend $300 in a club, $500 in a club every Saturday, right? But they're only making a certain amount. So I was going to say, do you have any tips or tricks or ways to think about, or even percentage to allocate, right? If you're living, paying, especially on Long Island, rent, how much would you set aside or tell someone, right, to like live off of in an enjoyable way, right? Let's say someone's buying a pair of shoes or an expensive shirt or something, going out, but they're living well above, right, their like kind of their means, right, their line. So yeah, recommendation on any type of like brief plan that someone can put in place just to have like right off the beginning, like how to look at it or shift their perspective pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have my briefcase with all my stack cards and everything. And again, like everybody's different, so I hate to like give blanket advice as to how much you should be allocating towards your living expenses.
On how much you're making.
And what your circumstances are.
Yeah, but like there's this like fair consumer spending thing, and it's like maybe 30% of your income should be going towards housing. And I forget the other allocations, but I know like about 30% of it, no more than 30 should be going towards housing.
Gotcha.
But again, we live on Long Island, so you got to adjust for living on Long Island.
Gotcha.
I know I've seen like this split of kind of like 50, 30, 20. You've seen that where it's like 50 being spent on your needs, 30 being on your wants, right, and 20 going to savings, which I think that like leaves a lot of room for wiggle and play. But like to that same point, you're saying like 30 going to housing, at least like gives you something to go off of, right? Because outside of that, you kind of have nothing. Right. It's like because I know people that will just say, oh, I get paid $1,000. I'm going to spend $1,000.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like
that hurts.
Like right. Like, but it's like so trying to have that conversation of like to your point, like all right, there are things that you're going to need and things that you do need, and it's like you have $1,000 and you have a $600 car note, right? It's like, come on, like you got like but it's like but I have $400 left, but it's like all right, well you need some money for tomorrow. Right, you need some money for housing, you need some money for emergencies, and then you need some for some wants. But it's like pay yourself first, right? Save for your future self, save for emergencies. But it's like trying to get over that hurdle of the mindset of I have $1,000, I should spend this $1,000.
So and it's good that you brought up that budget sheet I used to use. So that actually works for some people who have like very busy financial households and they're running multiple businesses. That's great, but I actually created one that's a lot more basic and like brought down to like a surface level, and it's trivial or childish, but I use like colors on it, right? So it's almost like you're playing a game with your budget. If you see that your inflows are less than your outflows,
if it's red, run. Get out of
it.
Work
on it. It puts people to want to work on it, right? So these little tricks, right? Doing that, talking in terms of your goals, making you really feel it and get involved in the process. I feel like that really moves the needle.
No, it's good, right? It's like just being able to create this plan and be able to see something visually probably just helps people. It's right. If I put my numbers in and it turns red, I know that something's wrong. Right. I can go back the other way and make those numbers work right, and then. But it's just like if I think we talk about it a lot. It's like habits, processes. If I can get into a place where now I'm only spending that 50, if I'm at that 50% number, I continue to do that and I can live at that level and that feels good. Like I try to get people to like, all right, now think about so if I can work out consistently and that happens and that starts to feel good, then you talk about that too. All right, think about living that way all the time. What if you can always feel that way? All right, what if you can always see money in your bank account, right? How does that feel, right? That's going to relieve some stress from you.
It's the same thing, right? When you guys get a client and they've done, a month with you, 2 months with you, and they're seeing those improvements. Same things when I'm, onboarded a client last year, and then they now have X amount of dollars in savings. They're positive every month. They're feeling good. Next review, it's totally different attitude. Their mood shift. They're happy to be there and everything.
Now they're ready to invest. Exactly.
That's major. It affects everyone around them, I'm sure. So I was gonna say, independent, right? Financial advisor. What's the goal? Like, have you thought of, I mean, it doesn't have to be crazy specific, right? What's the 5 to 10 year Kenny look like in that sense? Like, right, it could be number of clients, it could be you're living in whatever location, right?
Yeah.
Do you have anything that for you is like, I guess the vision of Kenny being well in that sense, right? I know that we all have this vision of me could be like, I want to eventually own a house on the water. My girlfriend and I have a certain amount of real estate accrued, get into certain things, right? Have a certain amount that I'm making and stuff, and drive a certain car. I know that I like those are just cool milestones that I'd like to achieve, right? And wake up to every morning, if that sense. Is there anything for you as a financial advisor? You can be so, I feel like people can be so squeezed or cautious on their finances, right? So when do you spend money and when do you not? Do you have anything personally for you, 5 to 10 years or 20 years, what that looks like for you?
So I'm just really passionate about building this business, right? So it's me right now, and I don't really have any assistants, not even any working for me per se.
Okay.
So sole practitioner now, but definitely looks like onboarding more employees, so getting more people who are licensed financial advisors, getting assistants who are there to service my existing clients. Just because of the nature of the business, I do have a lot of clients already, so it is a lot to work with. So it does make sense to build out that way.
Good.
That's great.
But just based off of like what I want to do and what I'm passionate about, specifically like Black financial empowerment, Black generational wealth, or minority wealth in general, right? So I want to work with a lot of people, get big on minority wealth, be spreading that education. So it makes sense for me to build that way and achieve my ultimate goal of that. It's a noble task, I know, but something that I want to do.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, we need people trying to achieve hard tasks.
Yeah.
That's the only way to kind of get through it.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of guys that look like me in the business. So
For sure.
That's I definitely want to be somebody who younger me could look up to, and right, like this is possible.
100%.
To do this. So.
Yeah.
And just passing down good information.
Thank
Kenny,
you.
appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
joining
guys
us.
for having me.
Yeah. Means a lot. Obviously, again, first time we're kind of talking about financial wellness here. Hopefully this is something that we can kind of have either with some regular basis, right? Kind of even as market changes, things happen. We can just continue to give out good information because it's definitely needed, and it's not something that everyone has access to.
Absolutely.
As everyone knows here.
Yeah. So I know we're gonna probably throw your Instagram on. Do you have any contact information, anywhere people can find you, whether it's on social media, your personal, but anything business-wise they can find you?
Facebook, Kenny Charles hyphen financial consultant. On Twitter, LinkedIn, Kenny Charles.
X.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
Throw my website on the page as well. So yeah.
No, cool. We'll
Awesome.
definitely, so we'll shoot that up there, and hopefully even any tools as you build out, we'll hopefully be able to share kind of with our people here and anyone listening.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.